Hey there, folks, across the big blue yonder. I am Jeff. This is Tabletop Toolbox. And folks, I have paxed it to the max like a TJ PAXimista to bring you this 40th episode of the Weekly Ratchet. That's right, I just got back from the PAX Unplugged convention in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and I've got a bunch of new games and new experiences to share with you, and I'm going to spill the beans and maybe a little bit more right here on a Weekly Ratchet. Hey there, folks. Welcome back to the Weekly Ratchet. Thank you for joining me here on the channel. And as always, I hope you've had a fantastic week of playing games with family and or friends. I'm trying here, still working on this weekly schedule, getting back to things with the Weekly Ratchet. It is, of course, now Tuesday. I'm trying to get back to that Sunday, Monday schedule I've kind of had going, but it's just been a little tricky. Weekends have been very busy lately. And of course, I just got back from PAX Unplugged, got in late Saturday night. That's one reason why I didn't get to any filming on Sunday. PAX Unplugged is a gaming convention. PAX started off as a video gaming convention, and somewhere in the past they splintered off a unplugged sort of a board gaming, tabletop gaming subset, sub-convention, and that's what this is. It's all board games. There's a lot of Magic the Gathering, like a lot. But there is an expo hall. There's a lot going on, and I've been to Gen Con, and so I can kind of say that PAX Unplugged kind of feels like 15 to 20% maybe of what Gen Con is. So it's got the large convention center and everything is kind of there. Unlike Gen Con, there isn't the massive stadium across the street. There isn't extra stuff going off in all the neighboring hotels. There might be some of that, but it's a bit more attendee driven than, part of the actual organization, part of the actual, event schedule for PAX Unplugged. But there's still everything there. You've got, an expo hall where companies are selling games or demoing games. You've got publishers trying to get, new game ideas pitched. You've got lots of open play areas. You've got games set up sort of like new hotness sections that you can just go and play the newest games are set out more or less ready to go. You can kind of just sit down and play, or there are also open play areas where you can just bring whatever you have, whether you bought it there or brought it with you, whatever you want to do. And of course, there's tons of food, lots of events set up, panels and whatever else. I know Shut Up and Sit Down did something, I believe, Saturday night, or maybe into Sunday. I wasn't able to attend, obviously. But yeah, it's just a throng of people, a ton of people, and I've been going since 2021. This is my fourth year going. In the past 2 years, especially, last year and this year, it is just getting packed. It is getting very big. I found out this year for the first time that there is a fourth floor of the convention hall, and up there this year they had an open play area and that sort of new hotness area, and they had an unpublished section where people could just go and sort of put out for display the games that they are working on, hopefully to get noticed by a publisher. And in fact, I knew some friends who were doing that over the weekend. I had never been up to that floor, and it was a huge space. I didn't get a picture of the space in general, but I did take some photo and some video just of folks up there playing, and I'll be showing that and hopefully some other stuff here that I filmed while I was there. But it was a really neat event. There's just tons of different things going on. There's people from every walk of life. There's people doing cosplay. There's people with these really lavish setups. This particular gentleman wore this costume all day. I don't know how he did it. I was getting hot just watching him, and that's not the way that I wanted that to sound. But I was just like, man, that does not look comfortable to wear for as long as he wore that. But anyways, just a really neat event. I did a lot of shopping Friday morning. Friday afternoon, my feet were kind of dead, so I just kind of laid low. I, sort of sight saw and walked around. I was really looking hard to meet up with Paula Deming. I really wanted to meet her. I'm pretty sure she was there. I'm pretty sure I saw her. I was also trying to meet up with the folks from Shut Up and Sit Down. I saw Matt Lees. I didn't get to chat with either of them, and I was really disappointed in that. Just trying to network and meet some folks. I did run into John from John Gets Games, had a really nice chat with him. I, of course, completely forgot to take a picture, but had a good chat with him just about, sort of the filming process. And that's what I like to do. I like to chat with these guys about, what's your setup like, and just sort of funny experiences that we've had as content creators. And in that process, kind of get some ideas, kind of get some behind the scenes tips or tricks on, maybe how they do things and how I might be able to use that to improve my process. So that was a really nice conversation. And I did have a couple of people sort of just stop me randomly and say, oh, hey, I know you from YouTube and like your stuff. And if those folks are watching this, I really want to say thank you. It was those little moments that made the humongous pain in my left foot feel a little bit more manageable, it's not too bad. I can handle this. So it was just really, really nice to have people stop me and chat for a little bit. It's always a great feeling. Of course, it's a convention, and so I bought a bunch of games. I'm going to chat about a bunch of games. I didn't get to do as much playing as I wanted to. However, I've never played games at PAX Unplugged because I've always just gone up there for a day, did some shopping, said hey to some folks, and left. This year I stayed for the first night, for Friday night, and kind of had a little bit of a schedule on Saturday. And I did get to play some games on Saturday, which was just really, really nice. And I'm hoping to build on that in future years. I want to try and go and do more playing, maybe check out some of the new hotness stuff. Like I said, I took some photos and some videos of some of the games in that new hotness games I had not heard of. And I want to check them out. And I kind of wish I had had some more time to do that. I didn't even know that room was there until Saturday morning. So I was a little behind the game on that one. Anyways, I'm going to go ahead and jump over to the recently acquired games, and we'll chat a little bit more about PAX Unplugged. So for usual viewers of the show, you'll know that I've gone the past couple of weeks without having any new games to chat about, but that is not the case for this video. I've got a couple of games here, most of which are related to PAX, but a few of them are not. And the first one is not. This is Windmill Valley by Board and Dice. Now, I ordered this just before I left, and it actually delivered the Saturday that I came back. And I got a pretty good deal on this game, even brand new. I played this at the Dice Tower Retreat this year, a couple months ago, and I'm not a huge fan of Board and Dice. This is by Board and Dice, but this game really clicked with me. I really had a fun time with this. It is an absolutely gorgeous looking main board. It does kind of have this gimmick in that you're using these spinning gears to determine the actions that you're going to take on your turn. You can upgrade those gears. You can change the speed at which you spin those gears or how many spaces you turn those gears to potentially sort of accelerate the game. And there's some interesting timing elements as far as how quickly you're spinning your main wheel. You've got one wheel with, I believe, 6 actions. The other one has 5. Maybe it's 7 and 6. I don't quite recall. And there's a lot going on in this. On this large board, you're putting out these windmills that will sort of give you some bonuses from adjacent spaces. There's this whole Queen's request or Queen's goals or something that you're trying to do. I actually don't quite remember that element of the game that well. And you also have a personal board where you're putting out putting out these windmills to unlock various bonuses. You're also planting tulips on your board to get endgame scoring. And there's a bit more even than that. As I mentioned, you can upgrade your action wheels, and there's some points you can gain from that as well. Just, again, a lot going on. And I really did enjoy my first play of this. I've heard some mixed reviews on this game, and I'm wondering, as I delve into it a bit more, might I find some elements of it that I really don't care for, which is why I was shopping for a good deal on this game. And I also find it kind of funny because, again, this just delivered on Saturday, and today I see that there's an expansion announced for this game. You just can't keep up in this hobby. You never get to feel like you're caught up. Anyways, Windmill Valley, looking forward to playing this. I've also heard some good stuff about the solo experience, and so I am hoping to check that out. Okay, on to PAX. As I mentioned, I did some shopping on Friday, and I got into the hall, a pretty big hall. Again, lots going on, lots of people there, and even just trying to get organized right when the show opens, right when the expo hall opens, and okay, where do I want to go first? I had myself a list of booths I wanted to hit up, and I just kind of happened to be closest to the Flat River group, and I walked around and I realized that they were the ones selling Compile. I was able to jump in a line and grab a copy of this game. Now, this is a 2-player card game, and it reminds me a lot of Airland and Sea. Now, what I was thinking was that, and I'm trying to get my computer unlocked here, Airland and Sea is by John Perry. It is also a 2-player game. That is from Arcane Wonders. And in Airland and Sea, you're fighting across 3 theaters of combat. Airland and Sea, you're placing cards on your side of that central row of of theater cards, air, land, and sea, and you're trying to amass the most points on your side of that theater. So if you have 6 points in air and your opponent has 4, well, then you won the air portion of that conflict. And, if you win 2 of those 3 theaters, then you sort of win that fight. You get a bunch of points, and you keep fighting until someone reaches a total score, or maybe it's 3 victory. I believe it's a total score you're working towards. This is very similar to that, but it's a very different. It's a different designer. It's a different publisher. This is from Michael Yang, and it is published by Greater Than Games. It's being distributed by Flat River Group, and in this game, you are competing artificial intelligence, and you're trying to compile your codes, 3 codes in 3, again, sort of areas or fields, however you want to look at it. They're not theaters of war. They're topics such as earth, liquid, metal, fire, death, life, love, that kind of stuff. And you draft those sort of topics, if you will, and then I think there are 6 cards to go with each of those topics. So at the beginning of the game, you're going to kind of pick your 3, your opponent picks their 3. You again are forming a row of those 6 cards, but you're working on your own 3 and they're working on theirs. And instead of trying to have the majority between those two topics, you have to be the first to reach 10 points to your code to flip that card over, and you have now compiled the code of that, again, that field, that area. But it gets a lot wonkier from there because you can actually rearrange the cards of those topics. So you can swap the hate and love cards, for example. But because you have to play cards to the appropriate topic, means that you're suddenly sort of changing your path of what you're putting cards to. And again, all you're trying to do is get 10 points to each card. It doesn't have to necessarily be all of the same subject, all of the same topic. Shut Up and Sit Down did a pretty heavy review on this, and it really sounded interesting, although I'm not sure how much I'm going to like that rearranging of the cards, because for one thing, your opponent does it, not you. So I think this one might be a little chaotic, but it sounds very similar to Air, Land, and Sea, just a bit more intense. I really, really liked Air, Land, and Sea. I've had a lot of fun playing that game, and I'm really happy I was able to get a copy of Compile. So hopefully more on that one coming soon. Let's see. I don't have these stacked in the right order, so give me a second here to reorganize. The next game I picked up, made a beeline for the CGE room and picked up SETI. This is by Thomas Olek. This one looks really, really neat. Again, I've been seeing and hearing a lot of conversations on this game. This is based on this is the search for extraterrestrial intelligence. There was actually a whole NASA program on SETI many years ago, and they were, at least from what I understood, trying to use people's computers to help process data, the data collected from outer space. You'll start off with this game sort of exploring, researching, and you'll eventually discover at least 2 alien life forms, and then it's a matter of sort of researching them and coming to understand them. I don't know a whole lot about this. I can tell you that there is a sea of components in this box, as I kind of punched it all and organized it yesterday. I think my buddy Daniel is coming over Thursday to give this a play, and I am quite excited to check out SETI by CGE. So hopefully more on that here very soon. Up next, I did pick up a copy of Ironwood. This is from, who is this one? Oh, this is Mind Clash. I knew that. And I was very surprised to learn this was a Mind Clash game, because Mind Clash is known for these very, very big, overwrought, overproduced games like Voidfall and others. And this one is a very nicely produced game. Don't get me wrong at all, but it is only a 2-player game. And the players are sort of duking this out asymmetrical, almost like Root. In fact, just looking at the board is very, very reminiscent of the game of Root, but it is a different designer. I don't know who the designer is. I'm going to mess these up. Maël Brunet, Julien Chaput. I'll put those on the screen because I apologize. I didn't say those right. I'm sure of it. Anyways, this is like I said, this sort of asymmetrical conflict game. One faction, one player plays the Iron faction, and they're basically, the industrialists are trying to tear down the forest and build their engines, and sort of take over the industrial era. The wood faction is trying to protect the forest and trying to keep the industrialists out, and you're sort of fighting over these, I keep forgetting what they're called, but you're trying to fight over these sort of wonders, and the first person to capture the 3 of them will win the game. This uses card play, and as I recall, you'll play a card and that will then give an action that your opponent can either take or maybe use later. Maybe there's a worker placement element. I don't quite remember. But again, shut up and sit down and talked about this one, and it really sounded interesting to me. I think it might be a little too aggressive for my wife and I to play, but I'm not sure. Really looks nice, and this has, each player actually has metal or wood components that they're using throughout the game. Really sharp looking design. Ironwood by Mindclash. Up next, actually, there's only one more left. No, there's 2 more left. I didn't put this one on the spreadsheet. This is Fromage by Ben Rossett, and this is from Road to Infamy Games. They made games like Canvas and Globetrotting. Ben Rossett has a number of games under his belt. Most notably for me is the game of Brewcrafters, a game where you're managing a brewery. It's one of my favorite games, and one of the first games I ever acquired. A fairly heavy Euro game, kind of based on Agricola, but you're managing a brewery. He also has a couple other games under his belt. He did a game called Homebrewers, which I actually reviewed here in the channel a long time ago, and I did not care for it. I just kind of felt like while he tried to get a lot of thematic elements into the game, it was ultimately sort of a dice placement. You're rolling dice to see what actions you could take. You're trying to barter those dice to trade them with other players because, well, hey, I really need to brew and you need to clean, so let's trade dice so that I guess I'll brew your beer and you'll clean my equipment. I know, it didn't really make a lot of sense. There was a whole engine building element to that game that, again, just didn't make thematic sense, the idea of brewing beer, and I ended up getting rid of my copy. He also made the Search for Planet X and I believe it's the Search for Unknown Life. I can't remember the name of the game. We were trying to find Lost Species. I think it was Search for Lost Species. And those were deduction style games. I picked up Planet X because I was really interested in the theme, and I really just did not enjoy the game. The whole deduction aspect of that just never really clicked with me. And so when Fromage was announced, at that point I was kind of like, you know what, I've been burned enough times, and I'm not going to go in on this game. But I was actually talking to some people at PAX, and I have an understanding of this now. It's a worker placement game, and that's a mechanism that I really enjoy. And it kind of uses this spinning wheel idea, not like a lot of other games that we're seeing more lately, but it's a timing element where you are placing workers onto almost like a cheese wedge in front of you. The worker may face 1 or 3 directions, left, away from you, or right. And then after everyone has placed their workers, that wheel turns. And if at any point any of your workers are facing you, you get them back and they can immediately be replaced. Each of those slices of this sort of cheese wheel works as its own, almost like a mini game. And so one of them is, trying to get market share, trying to generate cheese, trying to, make a higher quality of cheese. Another section might be sort of a global market, sort of trying to expand across those markets and try to get your cheese sold in different areas. And I'm not sure what the other 2 actions are. But this sounds really kind of neat. The couple people who described it to me made it really sound quite interesting. So I went ahead and I picked up a copy of this. I was able to get the limited edition, which was kind of nice because Road to Infamy was there. They were actually sort of selling this game through the Kinson Key Games booth, and they did not have the limited edition, but there was another just store that was there in the Expo Center selling a whole bunch of different games, and they had the limited edition for a couple bucks more. So, was happy to get this picked up. Interested to see how Ben Rossett captured the theme of cheese. And I think I had a joke with it. I'll let you know if it cut the mustard or if it cut the cheese. Anyways, just 2 more games here to mention. As I was walking through the hall, I saw a display for Anomia, and I was just kind of checking it out. And a gentleman came over and chatted with me, and was just kind of asking me, did I need any help or have any questions? And I said, oh, no, I know the game. I love the game. I was just checking to see if there was anything new. And there was this pop culture edition. I then quickly found out that he was the designer of the game. And so I was chatting with him about just how much I love Anomia. This game, for folks who may not know, made it, I believe, into my top 10. I think it was number 6 maybe 6 or 7 of my top 10 games over on the Dice Tower. This is a party game, and I can summarize it very quickly. You're drawing cards from decks. You're putting the card in front of you as quickly as you can. You put it face up without anyone else getting a chance to see it. The cards will have some words on it, and it'll have a symbol. In the moment you put your card down, you look to see if your symbol matches any other symbol of a card in front of another player. And if it does, you have to look at the clue on their card, and you have to look at the clue on your card. And theirs may say a color. It may say a type of whale. It may say a famous city or a P. Diddy album. I don't know, whatever. And you have to shout out a word or a phrase that has to do with that. So if it says color, you got to say red or blue or orange. If it's a type of whale, you've got to say humpback or maybe sperm. I don't know. It's whatever pops into your head. And sometimes something may not pop into your head at all. And you sit there going, while someone else shouts out, Justin Timberlake, whatever. And it almost immediately devolves into chaos, into shouting and hysterical laughing. It is one of my favorite, it is my favorite party game, without a doubt, one of my favorite games overall. And so I was really enjoying getting to chat with Andy about his game and just some of the silly moments that I've had with my family, with my friends playing this. And it was kind of funny because some of the stories I was sharing were obviously stories that he had either A, heard before, or sort of intentionally designed the game to create. And I thought that was pretty funny. Just a great conversation with him. He showed me a little print and play idea he has where it works with the same engine. You're trying to match your symbols, but instead of reading off a clue, it just has a tongue twister. And you have to read the other player's tongue twister as quickly as possible 3 times. So it may say, pleasant pheasant plucker. Try it. I dare you. So same idea, just got to try and read that off. And he was showing that to me, and I thought that was absolutely hysterical. And you can actually go on the website. I believe it is, I'll read this actually out to you. This is everstoys.com, but I want to say there's also an Anomia Press. Oh yeah, there it is, anomiapress.com. You can go there and get some print and play sort of activities to play with and have some fun with, and I think I'm going to check those out. This is the Anomia Pop Culture. They have a couple different party versions. There's also a Not Safe for Work, which I don't have because I don't really need that with my family. But that is Anomia. The last game that came in is not related to PAX. This is a upcoming Kickstarter that's been sent to me to take a look at. This is called Steal This Election. And I don't know anything else about it except for that I do know that it is supposed to be a sort of a silly, tongue-in-cheek, non-politically oriented game, 2-player game that's supposed to be a little fun, a little silly, a little lighthearted. And so I'll be checking this one out here in the coming weeks and doing a video here on the channel about this Kickstarter project. That is it for newly acquired games. Now, normally here I do a question of the week. I'll sort of ask a question to the audience and cover their comments. Now, I asked one last week, and that was basically to share me your most memorable experience from 2024 in terms of gaming. That is still the question going forward for next week. I'm sort of planning a little surprise for folks. So if you're seeing this for the first time, feel free to share with me a notable or a noteworthy gaming experience from 2024. You can also accompany it with a photo if you'd like. You can send that photo to tabletoptoolbox@gmail.com. Make sure that you tell me your YouTube username so that I can kind of connect the two together, and I will be sharing that in an upcoming episode of the Weekly Ratchet. Looking forward to it. With that being said, I'm going to go ahead and jump to recently played games. So as I said, I only got to play 2 games at PAX Unplugged this past weekend, which admittedly is 2 more games than I've ever played at PAX. So I'm not really bummed about that. If anything, I'm a little bummed by the fact that I didn't get to play any games the week leading up to PAX. Work is getting really busy nowadays. It's kind of cutting into my free time a little bit. But anyways, so I only have 2 games to chat about. I played them both at PAX, and they are both prototype games. They're both games that are still under development, at least in some aspect, and I think you'll see that especially in some of the pictures that I will share. But the first game I got to play, we kind of arranged this ahead of time. Ty McDonald and I sat together and played The Last Command. I've, of course, talked about this game here on the channel. This is a two-player deck building game where you're each representing a capital ship kind of in this epic broadsides battle, and you're building two different decks, a deck of system cards, a deck of crew cards, and you're working those decks independently, but then trying to create synergies between the crew and your systems and even the different systems that you're working on your ship. Really, really like this game. Just legitimately really enjoy this game. And Ty wanted to show me a new module he's working on, kind of an expansion maybe for Over the Horizon with this game. And this is a shield module. It doesn't have a name yet at this point, but he had a bunch of work in progress cards, and it was kind of cute. He had just white sort of squares on them for the artwork, and because he has my artwork ready for it, he had his daughter, who is 6 years old, draw some of the artwork on these cards, something that apparently she just loves getting to do. So that was really kind of fun. I was just getting to see some of this silly artwork, and but of course diving into what this expansion does. So like I said, he wanted to add shields, but as he put it, he didn't want it to just be another health tracker that sits over top of your ship health. And I think that's a valid comment, a valid sort of goal, and I think he pulled it off pretty well. So in this module, you have a deck of shield cards. They're all the same, and whenever you would gain shields, you simply take one of the cards from the supply deck and you put them next to your ship. And as long as you have those cards there, each card will deflect against one incoming damage, or it will negate any effects of a malfunction card that you would draw out of your draw deck. And those malfunction cards can get put into place by your opponent. They sit in your discard pile, they kind of cycle through your deck, and when you draw them, when you're refilling your hand at the end of each turn, malfunction cards will do a variety of different things. They'll either apply damage, or they may make you lose some power, so on and so forth, kind of a handful of negative effects. And so if you have a shield in present, you would lose that shield card. It goes back into the deck, and you would ignore the effect of that malfunction card or ignore any incoming damage. However, at the start of your next turn, any shield cards that you still have, they kind of like discharge. They lose their power. They don't go back in the deck. You get to keep them. They go into your discard piles, and since you have two decks that you're working with, you can choose which deck they go into. And I thought that was pretty nice too, because okay, I know I'm about to, draw some more system cards, so I'll put them in the system discard pile, and when I do that drawing and I reshuffle that deck, when those shields come out, they immediately go back into play next to your ship. You don't have to, use an action or a turn to get them into play. They just immediately go out, and you immediately get to redraw and replace that card. So I really like that aspect of it as well. And then, of course, he had a handful of system cards and crew cards that would give you these shields. They would work, again, in unique ways and unique synergies with crew members, with other systems, etc. And at one point, I got a pretty neat engine into play. Now, I'll say this first about Ty. I learned this about Ty. He likes to play the malfunction game. He likes to just push as many malfunction cards into his opponent's decks as he can, because they just keep cycling through. You can repair them, taking them out of your decks permanently, but if he's got an engine and he's just putting them back in, it just becomes this constant cycle. I, however, built a pretty interesting defense against it. So I had 3 cards in play, 3 systems. You only ever have 3. And I had a comms module that would just ping away 2 of his shields, just pluck it away. I think they went into I don't remember if they went into his discard or back of the deck. Doesn't matter. I had a weapon system that basically said that anytime I drew a malfunction card that would apply damage, he took it instead of me. And I thought it'd be nice for him to eat crow for a little bit and deal with the mess that he's been making. But my middle system, my communication system, said that whenever I would damage his shields to the point that he would lose that card, it basically went to me instead. I was supposed to get his shield at the same time he lost it, so he quickly got in the habit of him just passing it across the table like, well, these are yours. And he was sitting there and he was like, I've never seen this combo. This sucks to sit across, but it's really, really cool. Like, I'm glad to see that this is an option within the game. All that being said, I still lost this fight, but it was a very, very long fight. For one thing, I left that engine in place for several rounds and just kind of got to just relish in that. I let all my systems charge up with power. My thought process was that as I was just hoovering all these shield cards from him, I would eventually get to a point that I would just always have shields in play, and could wipe that engine out, put out some systems that would do some damage, and just start hammering on him. And that kind of worked, but he built a more efficient pair of decks than I did for sure, and eventually did manage to plick away my last few health. It was an epic fight. It was definitely, for the number of times I've played this was the longest, most like head scratching, like, what do I do about this? How do I get myself, to have more health than he does? How do I sort of turn the cycle around? And I didn't quite manage it, but it just felt like just a phenomenal fight. It really, really was a lot of fun. And so that was The Last Command. Still looking forward to that game coming out next year. Cannot wait to have some more time with that one. Love that game. And glad I got to play it. Ty, thanks for that opportunity. The next game that I played, this was a little later on Sunday. This was a prototype game called PAXimUs. This is by Michael Petre, and it's under I believe it's called Pen Tree Studios or Pen Tree Games, something like that. This is a flip and write game with sort of a theme of building an amusement park. And I could really easily get into the weeds of what this game sort of does and how it works. I'm going to try and not do that. But basically, when it is your turn to sort of be the active player, you're going to have this big deck of cards. You put out 6 cards from this supply. You have to put them into 3 columns. And each column has to have at least 1 card. So you can have, anywhere from 1 to 4 cards sort of distributed across these three columns. And then you're the last player to choose which of those 3 columns you are going to install into your amusement park. So it is a flip and write, but also sort of an I split you choose. Each one of those cards has a cost. There are 5 different themes of these cards. One of them was space or sci-fi. I think there was Western, and I can't remember what the other ones were. But just 5 different colors and sort of symbols to each of these themes within your amusement park. And so when you decide which column of cards you're going to buy, each card has a cost. You start off with $100. You just sort of scratch off, one of these, these symbols of coins, basically, to indicate how much money that you spent. And then you will use colored pencils, which will come with the game, to sort of replicate these shapes into your park. And you can rotate them, flip them however you want, that was kind of a unique IQ challenge to try and figure out, okay, how do I rotate and flip this symbol? That was tricky. And there's a lot, like I said, there's a lot to it. As you're building these different themes next to each other, you kind of get these adjacency bonuses, and you'll circle these spots on these tracks. If you fill one of these adjacency bonuses with having 5 of the same color, touching each other in some way, then you get to mark off a spot on the end of that track, which gives you a single box of another color that doesn't have to be adjacent to its own color to get the adjacency bonus. That was confusing. There was a train track that you can build, and you had to build each train station 2 spaces away from a previous train station, except for your first, of course. And then you had to kind of draw a track between them. And so this train track could kind of bifurcate your park in a weird way that you kind of had to try and work around not only the stations, but the tracks as well. And there are also employees that you would draft and buy out of these stacks. The employees were just kind of like this sideways smiley face that you would draw into a box. And as long as it was adjacent to a ride of its same color, the employees were color-coded just like the amusements were, then they would give you some extra points as well. And there's probably a few other things in there that I'm forgetting. Most of these, like all of your sort of flip and write games, you have a grid of spaces, just simple squares. And I think your smallest amusement was maybe 3 squares, like an L shape, and you can have a 2x2 grid. And if you got up to 8 squares, well, that was a roller coaster. It would be a very big, complex shape to kind of work into your park, but they would also give you a lot of points. They were also very expensive. And so again, it was just sort of managing that money, managing what you're building. And that aspect of it was nice. It was fun to do that. I'm not a huge flip and write, roll and write type fan. And I've talked about that a bunch here in the channel. For me especially, it's the fact that, as you'll see in these pictures, it was a white piece of paper with a bunch of symbols on it and just a white grid, and then it's up to me to color in these boxes to make it look interesting. And that just doesn't do anything for me. And I think about other amusement games with polyomino tiles like 10 Penny Parks, one of my favorite games. And throughout that entire game, you feel like you're building an amusement park, and there's some extra spatial challenges in that game. But, I was especially bummed that when Michael said, oh, well, these purple things are your sci-fi. And I kind of grimaced because I was like, nothing about it said sci-fi to me. They were just purple boxes that I'm coloring in on a page. I love sci-fi, and I want to see, a Space Mountain equivalent. I want to see, an astronaut kiosk where you could buy costumes of an astronaut, whatever. Like, I want to feel that theme. And I just never did. Some of the rules were a little wonky. Again, that whole idea of, well, you got to get 5 things adjacent, and then you can get another thing of another color that doesn't have to be adjacent. So maybe the 5 things that you got aren't adjacent because maybe you already got 5 of something else adjacent, and it gave you that extra pip of the color that you're working on. Like, it was confusing. And in fact, it was because of that we found out yesterday, several days after the game, that I had actually lost. I thought I had won by 2 points, and it turns out that my friend Shannon didn't score, didn't catch something in the rules and left out basically 25 points, and it was like, well, that was kind of a bummer, but I think about this game, and I was playing it, and I thought, if I was drafting these cards and instead taking a polyomino tile from a supply and placing it into my park like 10 penny parks, and if those tiles were illustrated, and again, if they looked like these rides, these amusements, these whatever, if I had little figurines or little meeples of the different colors that I was placing next to the rides to staff them, little train tiles or something, I don't know. And I realized that ramps the cost up significantly, but it also, for me, draws me so much more into the idea because it looks like I'm building an amusement park. This, if you kind of like put your blinders on just a little bit, you were just playing Cartographers. And Cartographers, same thing. It's a decent game, but you're supposed to be building all these different biomes and having monsters and all that, and you don't visually see any of that unless you're a heck of an artist, which I am not. But anyways, it was a neat game. I'm glad I got to play it. This is not something that I would purchase, just as it kind of looks and feels right now. I know it's under development, so I know that a good number of things may still change with this game, and I'm glad I got to check it out. But anyways, that was PAXimUs by Mark Pitre. And that's it for the Weekly Ratchet this week. I'm hoping that I'll get back onto a good schedule. Next week, it's already Wednesday. I'm hoping I'll have this thing out the door here fairly soon. But thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you guys again soon. Cheers.